The morning sun cast long shadows across the bustling streets of Chicago as Dr. Lisa Martinez hurried toward the Global Defense Initiative building. Her coffee had grown cold in her hands, but she barely noticed. The readings from the Deep Space Monitoring Station had kept her awake all night, and what she discovered made her stomach twist with worry. 20,000 years ago, when humans were still learning to make fire and hunt with stone tools, something extraordinary happened in what would one day become downtown Chicago. A massive alien vessel called the Stellar Dawn had crashed in a barren valley during an emergency supply run. The ship belonged to the Zephyrian Empire, a civilization that had been exploring the galaxy for millions of years. Commander Vextal and his crew had survived the crash, but their ship was beyond repair. The quantum fuel reserves they carried were precious beyond measure, and the advanced technology scattered across the crash site represented centuries of Zephyrian scientific advancement. The crew gathered what they could carry and activated their emergency beacon. Within days, rescue pods arrived from their homeworld, but they had to leave everything else behind. Before departing Earth, Commander Vextal planted a beacon deep in the ground and recorded the exact coordinates of their lost supplies. He promised his crew they would return once the Zephyrian fleet was rebuilt. The Empire was fighting a war on 3 fronts, and every ship was needed. Earth would have to wait. Now in the year 2045, that wait was finally over. Dr. Martinez burst through the doors of the monitoring station, her heart racing. The massive display screens showed something that should have been impossible. A fleet of ships, each one larger than anything humans had ever built, was approaching Earth from the outer edge of the solar system. The lead vessel was enormous, stretching nearly 10 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming with materials that seemed to bend light around them. "How long until they reach Earth orbit?" she asked the technician on duty. "At their current speed, maybe 6 hours," came the reply. The young man's hands shook as he pointed to the tracking data. "Dr. Martinez, these ships are bigger than our space stations. We've never seen anything like this." Lisa immediately contacted General Jake Thompson at the Pentagon. Within minutes, defense systems across the globe were powering up. Fighter squadrons scrambled from bases on every continent. Though everyone knew their weapons would be useless against technology, thousands of years more advanced than anything humans possessed. At the United Nations building in New York, emergency sessions were called. President Amy Collins flew in from Washington, while UN Secretary General Carlos Rivera coordinated with world leaders. The message was clear. Humanity was about to face its first contact with an alien civilization, and nobody knew if they came in peace. Dr. Kevin Walsh, Earth's leading expert in theoretical communication protocols, worked frantically to prepare translation systems. His team had spent decades developing methods for communicating with alien intelligence, but all their work had been theoretical. Now they faced the real thing. The alien fleet maintained a steady course toward Earth, ignoring all attempts at communication. Radio signals, mathematical sequences, even music were broadcast toward the approaching ships. Nothing received a response. The silence was more terrifying than any threat. As the hours passed, people around the world watched their screens in fear and wonder. Some gathered in churches and temples praying for protection. Others looted stores and prepared for the end of civilization. Most simply waited, unable to do anything but hope that whatever was coming would not mean the destruction of their species. The lead ship finally entered Earth's atmosphere, its massive bulk casting shadows over entire cities as it passed overhead. Smaller vessels detached from the main fleet and descended toward different locations around the globe. The largest of these headed directly for Chicago. Captain Zareth stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring down at the blue and green world below. He was the great-great-grandson of Commander Vextal, and he carried the weight of 20,000 years of Zephyrian history on his shoulders. His people were dying. Their homeworld's energy crisis had reached a critical point, and without the quantum fuel left on this planet, their entire civilization would collapse within a generation. The coordinates matched perfectly. The beacon his ancestor had planted still transmitted its signal, buried deep beneath what appeared to be a massive city. Zareth frowned as he studied the readings. According to their records, this world had been inhabited by primitive creatures who lived in caves and hunted with simple tools. The sprawling metropolis below suggested these creatures had developed far beyond what anyone had expected. "Prepare a landing party," Zareth ordered his second in command. "We will retrieve our property and depart as quickly as possible." The alien landing craft touched down in Grant Park, its smooth hull reflecting the afternoon sun. The ship was beautiful in its alien design, with curves and angles that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. A hatch opened with a soft hiss, and the first Zephyrians to set foot on Earth in 20 millennia stepped onto the grass. They were tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and large eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages. Their clothing appeared to be made of living metal that shifted and moved with their bodies. Captain Zareth led the group, his expression stern but curious as he surveyed the humans who had gathered to greet them. Dr. Walsh approached carefully, his hands raised in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. Behind him stood General Thompson, President Collins, and a dozen other world leaders who had rushed to Chicago for this historic moment. The translation device Dr. Walsh carried had been programmed with thousands of possible linguistic patterns. When Captain Zareth spoke, the machine worked for several seconds before producing words in English. "We have come to reclaim what is ours," the alien captain said, his voice carrying authority and urgency. 20,000 rotations ago, our vessel crashed in this location. We left behind supplies and technology that belonged to the Zephyrian Empire. We require their immediate return. The humans exchanged worried glances. They had expected many things from first contact with an alien species, but a property dispute had not been one of them. Dr. Martinez stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. "Captain, we welcome you to Earth," she said carefully. "We would very much like to help you, but we need to understand exactly what you're looking for. This area has been inhabited by our people for thousands of years." Zareth activated a holographic projector, and suddenly the air above them filled with images of the ancient crash site. The valley looked nothing like the modern city that surrounded them now. Where skyscrapers reached toward the sky, the hologram showed scattered debris and strange crystalline formations that glowed with inner light. "Our quantum fuel reserves," Zareth explained, pointing to the glowing crystals, "and the components of our ship. They contain technology essential to our survival. Without them, our people will face extinction." The weight of his words settled over the assembled humans like a cold blanket. This was not just a request, it was a matter of life and death for an entire alien civilization, and somehow humanity held the key to their survival. The temporary command center in Grant Park buzzed with activity as human and alien representatives tried to understand each other. President Amy Collins sat across from Captain Zareth at a hastily assembled table, while translators worked frantically to improve communication between the two species. The afternoon sun cast strange shadows through the alien ship's energy field, making everything feel dreamlike and unreal. Captain Zareth studied the human leaders with growing confusion. These creatures were nothing like the primitive beings his ancestors had described in their reports. They wore complex clothing, carried advanced communication devices, and spoke with the confidence of a technological civilization. Their eyes held intelligence and purpose that reminded him uncomfortably of his own people. "Please help us understand your situation," President Collins said carefully. "You mentioned a crash that happened 20,000 years ago. Can you show us more details about what you're looking for?" Zareth activated another holographic display, this time showing a detailed scan of the ancient crash site. The quantum fuel crystals appeared as brilliant blue formations scattered across a wide area. The ship's hull fragments gleamed like silver stars in the projection, and various technological components were marked with Zephyrian symbols that meant nothing to the humans watching. "These materials are not just valuable to us," Zareth explained. "They are essential for our survival. Our homeworld faces an energy crisis that threatens every living being in our empire. Without the quantum fuel we left here, billions of our people will die within one generation." Dr. Helen Brooks, a material scientist who had been called in from the University of Chicago, leaned forward to study the hologram more closely. Something about the crystalline structures looked familiar, but she could not place where she had seen them before. The metallic components also triggered a memory she could not quite grasp. "Captain, I need to ask you something important," Dr. Brooks said. "These materials you're showing us, what exactly do they do? How do they work?" Zareth seemed surprised by the question. "The quantum crystals store and focus energy in ways your science would not understand. They can power cities, ships, and manufacturing centers for thousands of years without losing potency. The hull fragments contain alloys that are stronger than any natural material and can withstand the heat of stars. The technological components include memory cores with the knowledge of our entire civilization, General Jake Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The alien's description of these materials sounded too familiar. He had seen reports about mysterious energy sources and incredibly strong building materials that had revolutionized human technology over the past few centuries. His worst fears were beginning to take shape. "Dr. Brooks," General Thompson said quietly, "I think we need to call in some experts from the Historical Technology Department." Within an hour, Dr. Martin Cole arrived from the Smithsonian Institution with a team of historians and archaeologists. They brought with them crates of old documents, photographs, and material samples that dated back to the early days of the Industrial Revolution. Dr. Cole's face was pale as he spread the documents across the table. "Captain Zareth," Dr. Cole began, his voice shaking slightly, "I'm afraid we have some very difficult news to share with you. The crash site you're looking for was discovered by human miners in the year 1847. They found strange crystals and metal fragments in what they thought was a natural cave system, Captain." Zareth straightened in his chair, his large eyes fixed on the human scientist. "And what happened to these materials?" Dr. Cole opened one of the oldest files and pulled out a faded photograph. It showed men in old-fashioned clothing standing around glowing blue crystals that were identical to the ones in Zareth's hologram. They were mined and sold to various companies across the world. The miners didn't understand what they had found, but they knew the crystals produced incredible amounts of energy. Dr. Brooks suddenly understood why the materials had looked familiar. She pulled out her tablet and began showing images of modern power plants, computer systems, and manufacturing equipment. "Captain, I think your quantum fuel became the foundation for our clean energy revolution. Every major city on Earth is powered by reactors that use crystalline energy sources. We call them fusion crystals, but they match your descriptions exactly." The silence that followed was deafening. Captain Zareth stared at the images on Dr. Brooks's tablet, his expression shifting from confusion to horror. The technology his people desperately needed to survive was no longer sitting in a buried crash site. It was scattered across an entire planet, built into the foundation of human civilization. "What about the hull fragments?" Zareth asked, though his voice suggested he already feared the answer. Dr. Cole opened another file, this one filled with construction photographs from the late 1800s and early 1900s. The metal was melted down and used in major building projects. The Brooklyn Bridge contains some of it, so does the Eiffel Tower. The Panama Canal used it for reinforcement. We didn't know it was alien technology, but our engineers recognized that it was stronger than anything they had ever seen. General Thompson leaned forward with a grim expression. "Captain, how much of these materials do you need to save your people?" Zareth consulted a device on his wrist that projected complex calculations into the air. "The quantum fuel alone would require approximately 40% of what we originally left here. The hull alloys would need to be completely recovered to rebuild our energy distribution systems. The memory cores are irreplaceable and contain scientific knowledge that took our civilization millions of years to develop, President." Collins felt her heart sink as she began to understand the scope of the problem. "Captain, what you're describing would require us to shut down every power plant on Earth, tear down some of our most important structures, and somehow extract materials that have been integrated into thousands of different systems. It would destroy our civilization. And without these materials, our civilization will be destroyed," Captain Zareth replied, his voice carrying the weight of billions of lives. "My people sent me here with specific orders. I must return with the quantum fuel and technology, or I must find an acceptable substitute. There are no other options." Dr. Walsh, who had been quietly working on improving the translation systems, looked up from his equipment with concern. "Captain, when you say there are no other options, what exactly does that mean?" Zareth was quiet for a long moment, clearly struggling with something he did not want to say. "If I cannot complete my mission through negotiation, the High Council has authorized me to take what we need by force. My people are desperate, and desperate beings do desperate things." The human representatives exchanged worried glances. They had hoped that first contact with an alien species would lead to friendship and cooperation. Instead, they found themselves facing an impossible choice between the survival of their own civilization and the survival of an alien empire that had inadvertently given humanity the tools to build their modern world. As the sun began to set over Chicago, both species realized they were standing at the edge of a conflict that neither wanted, but both might be forced to fight. The Zephyrians needed their ancient technology to survive, and the humans could not give it up without destroying everything they had built. Somewhere in the growing darkness between compromise and conflict, the future of two civilizations hung in the balance. Captain Zareth stood alone in his private quarters aboard the flagship, staring out at the blue planet below. 3 days had passed since the devastating revelation that the Zephyrian technology was scattered across human civilization. His communication with the High Council had been long and difficult, filled with silences that spoke louder than words. The response he received made his heart heavy with dread. The emergency session of the Zephyrian High Council had lasted for hours. Ancient beings who had lived for thousands of years debated the fate of two civilizations, while their homeworld continued its slow death. The energy crisis had reached critical levels, and their scientists estimated they had less than 50 years before complete societal collapse. The quantum fuel on Earth was not just their best hope for survival, it was their only hope. High Counselor Yexmar had been clear in her final transmission to Captain Zareth. The humans must provide compensation for the lost Zephyrian property, whether they understood its origin or not. Ignorance was not an excuse for theft, even unintentional theft. The Council demanded either the return of equivalent quantum materials or complete technological schematics of every device built using Zephyrian technology. Zareth knew this demand was impossible for the humans to meet. Their technology was primitive compared to Zephyrian science, and they clearly did not understand how their own energy systems truly worked. They had stumbled onto advanced alien technology and built their entire civilization around it without ever learning its real principles. Asking them to reproduce it was like asking children to rebuild a starship using wooden blocks. In the temporary conference room that had been set up in Chicago's City Hall, the human leadership struggled to comprehend the scope of the alien demands. President Collins sat with her head in her hands while teams of scientists and engineers tried to explain why the Zephyrian request was impossible to fulfill. "Ma'am," Dr. Brooks said carefully, "we've been studying these energy systems for over a century. But we've only scratched the surface of how they actually work. We know how to maintain them and build new ones based on existing designs, but the fundamental science behind them is beyond our current understanding. It would take us hundreds of years to develop equivalent technology from scratch." Susan Parker, Earth's most experienced international negotiator, reviewed the reports with growing despair. She had handled trade disputes, territorial conflicts, and resource negotiations between human nations, but nothing had prepared her for this situation. How do you negotiate with aliens who possess technology that could destroy your entire planet, especially when they have legitimate claims to property that your species has unknowingly stolen? Colonel Rick Adams, representing the military perspective, was more direct in his assessment. "The bottom line is simple," he said. "We cannot give them what they want without destroying ourselves, and they cannot survive without getting it back. This is going to end in conflict whether we want it or not." Dr. Kevin Walsh had been working around the clock to improve communication with the aliens, hoping that better understanding might lead to a peaceful solution. His efforts were interrupted when new contacts appeared on Earth's orbital monitoring systems. A second fleet of Zephyrian ships had arrived, and these vessels looked very different from Captain Zareth's diplomatic mission. The new ships were clearly designed for war. Their hulls bristled with weapon systems that human scientists could not even begin to understand. Energy readings from the vessels suggested they carried enough firepower to sterilize entire continents. Leading this battle fleet was War Commander Kextor, a military leader who had little patience for diplomatic solutions. War Commander Kextor demanded an immediate meeting with Captain Zareth aboard the flagship. The two Zephyrians had known each other for centuries, but their approaches to solving problems were completely different. Kextor believed in the direct application of superior force, while Zareth preferred negotiation and careful planning. "The High Council grows impatient," Kextor announced as he strode onto the bridge. "These primitive creatures have stolen our property and refuse to return it. They offer excuses and explanations instead of solutions. The time for talk has ended." Captain Zareth studied his old rival with concern. "The humans did not know they were taking our technology. Their actions were not deliberate theft, but rather unfortunate circumstance. Surely we can find a solution that does not require violence. Ignorance does not absolve them of responsibility." Kextor replied coldly. "They have had our technology for 200 of their years. They have built cities and powered their civilization using stolen Zephyrian resources. The debt they owe us has grown beyond measure, and now they must pay. The war commander activated a holographic display showing detailed scans of Earth's major cities. Red markers indicated locations where Zephyrian technology had been detected. The markers covered every continent and appeared in hundreds of locations. My ships can extract what we need by force. The humans are welcome to rebuild their civilization using their own primitive methods after we reclaim our property. Zareth felt his confidence in a peaceful solution beginning to crumble. Kextor, if we take their technology by force, we will be responsible for the collapse of their entire civilization. Billions of humans will die without their energy systems. That is not our concern, Kextor responded without emotion. Our own people are dying while we waste time talking to these creatures. Every day we delay, more Zephyrian lives are lost. I will not sacrifice our species to preserve theirs. On Earth, the arrival of the war fleet sent panic through every government and military organization on the planet. Admiral Nicole Davis, commanding Earth's combined space defense forces, knew her ships were completely outmatched. Human technology was barely advanced enough to reach their own moon, while the aliens traveled between star systems as easily as humans drove cars between cities. Underground, resistance movements began forming even before any invasion had begun. Tyler Brooks, a former Special Forces operative, coordinated with similar groups across the globe. They had no weapons that could damage alien ships, but they refused to surrender without a fight. The spirit that had driven humanity to survive ice ages, plagues, and world wars was awakening again in the face of this ultimate threat. Dr. Walsh and his team worked desperately to find some form of compromise. Young scientist Emma Rodriguez had been studying the energy readings from both human and alien technology, looking for patterns that might suggest a solution. Her preliminary findings were interesting but not yet complete enough to present to either side. Meanwhile, Dr. Paul Green led a team trying to determine if Earth had any natural resources that might interest the Zephyrians. If they could offer something of value in exchange for allowing humans to keep their technology, there might still be hope for a peaceful resolution. As the deadline set by the Zephyrian High Council approached, both species prepared for a conflict that would determine the fate of billions of lives. Captain Zareth found himself caught between his duty to his dying people and his growing respect for human determination and ingenuity. War Commander Kextor positioned his battle fleet for maximum effect, ready to strip Earth of its alien-derived technology, regardless of the cost to human civilization. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test whether two intelligent species could find a way to coexist, or whether the universe was only large enough for one of them to survive. The ultimatum from the Zephyrian High Council arrived exactly 72 hours after War Commander Kextor's fleet had taken position around Earth. The message was simple and terrifying in its clarity. Humanity had 7 days to begin dismantling their technology and returning Zephyrian materials, or the aliens would take what they needed by force. No exceptions would be made, and no delays would be tolerated. President Collins stood before the emergency session of the United Nations, her voice steady despite the weight of the decision she was about to announce. Representatives from every nation on Earth filled the assembly hall, their faces reflecting the same mixture of fear and determination that had gripped the entire planet since the aliens arrived. "The alien demands are clear," President Collins said. Her words carried to billions of people watching around the world. "They want us to destroy our civilization to save theirs. They ask us to condemn our children to darkness so that their children might live in light. This is a choice no species should ever have to make, and it is a choice we refuse to accept." The response from Earth's population was immediate and overwhelming. Instead of panic or surrender, humanity chose defiance. Factory workers refused to shut down power plants. Engineers worked overtime to strengthen defense systems. Scientists pushed themselves beyond exhaustion, searching for alternatives. From the smallest villages to the largest cities, the message was the same. Earth would not surrender without a fight. Admiral Nicole Davis coordinated the defense preparations from the orbital command station above Earth. Her fleet consisted of 12 space cruisers, 46 frigates, and over 200 fighter craft. Against the alien war fleet, these forces were laughably inadequate, but Admiral Davis had not built her reputation by backing down from impossible odds. "I know what everyone is thinking," she told her commanders during their final strategy meeting. "Our weapons cannot penetrate their shields. Our ships are too slow to escape their pursuit. By every measure of military science, we cannot win this fight. But military science has never accounted for human stubbornness, and that might be the only advantage we need. Tyler Brooks had spent the past week organizing resistance cells in major cities across 6 continents. His network included former soldiers, engineers, scientists, and ordinary citizens who refused to accept alien occupation. They had no weapons capable of damaging Zephyrian technology, but they understood that successful resistance was about more than firepower. They expect us to be primitive and disorganized, Tyler explained to his team leaders during a secure video conference. They think superior technology guarantees superior victory. Every invasion force in human history has learned the same lesson. Controlling territory is easy, but controlling people who refuse to be controlled is impossible. While military and resistance forces prepared for the worst, Dr. Walsh and his scientific team made a discovery that would change everything. Young genius Emma Rodriguez had been working for 6 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination as she analyzed energy readings from both human and alien technology. Her breakthrough came at 3 a.m. when she was so tired she could barely see straight. "Dr. Walsh, you need to see this immediately," Emma called out, her voice cracking with exhaustion and excitement. "I think I know why the aliens are so desperate to get their technology back. And it's not what they told us." Dr. Walsh rushed to Emma's workstation, where she had assembled a complex array of monitoring equipment pointed at samples of the crystalline energy sources that powered human cities. The readings on her screens showed patterns that made no sense according to conventional physics, but they told a story that was both amazing and terrifying. "Look at these energy output measurements," Emma explained, pointing to graphs that showed increasing power levels over time. "The quantum crystals aren't just storing energy like the aliens think they are. They're actually growing stronger through their interaction with Earth's magnetic field and our industrial processes. The energy output from our fusion reactors is now 30% higher than it was 50 years ago." Dr. Walsh studied the data with growing excitement. "Are you saying that human technology has improved upon the original alien design?" "That's exactly what I'm saying," Emma replied. "But it gets better. Look at these molecular analyses of the hull alloys used in our buildings and infrastructure. The metal has been interacting with Earth's atmosphere and our manufacturing processes for over a century. It's developed properties that the original Zephyrian materials never had. It's stronger, more flexible, and it conducts energy more efficiently." Dr. Paul Green joined the discussion after being awakened by an urgent phone call. As he reviewed Emma's findings, his expression shifted from skepticism to amazement. "This is incredible. We haven't just preserved their technology, we've evolved it. The quantum biological reactors powering our cities are generating energy at rates the original Zephyrian engineers never achieved." The implications of this discovery were staggering. Humanity had not simply stolen alien technology and used it. They had unknowingly improved upon it through centuries of integration with Earth's unique environment and human innovation. The materials the Zephyrians so desperately needed were no longer the same materials they had left behind 20,000 years ago. They had become something new and better. Dr. Helen Brooks was called in to verify the findings. As one of Earth's leading materials scientists, her confirmation would be crucial to any negotiations with the aliens. After reviewing Emma's data and conducting her own tests, she reached the same conclusion. The alien technology has been transformed by its integration with human civilization, Dr. Brooks announced to the Emergency Scientific Council. "What we have now is hybrid technology that combines the best of both species' capabilities. The Zephyrians left behind tools, but we've turned those tools into something they never imagined." When this information was presented to President Collins and the world leaders, the political implications became clear immediately. Humanity was not just the guardian of stolen alien property. They were the innovators who had taken that property and made it better. This changed the entire foundation of the negotiations. Jack Foster, Earth's most skilled diplomat, was chosen to present these findings to Captain Zareth. The meeting took place aboard the alien flagship, with both species representatives surrounded by the tension of impending conflict. Foster carried with him data files, energy readings, and material samples that told the story of 20,000 years of unintentional collaboration between 2 civilizations. "Captain Zareth," Foster began, his voice calm despite the weight of the moment, "we have discovered something that changes everything about this situation. The technology you left on our planet has not remained unchanged. It has grown and evolved through its interaction with human civilization and Earth's environment. Captain Zareth studied the human data with growing amazement. The energy readings showed power outputs that exceeded anything in current Zephyrian technology. The material analyses revealed properties that their own scientists had never achieved. Most shocking of all, the hybrid systems seemed to be continuing their evolution, becoming more efficient and powerful with each passing year. "How is this possible?" Zareth asked, his voice filled with wonder and confusion. "Our technology was already advanced beyond anything your species could understand. How could primitive beings improve upon the work of millions of years of Zephyrian science?" Foster smiled for the first time since the aliens had arrived. "Captain, that's exactly the wrong question. The right question is, what could our two species accomplish if we worked together instead of fighting over the past?" The revelation that humanity had improved upon Zephyrian technology created chaos in both camps. War Commander Kextor refused to believe that primitive humans could enhance advanced alien science. Some Zephyrian scientists demanded immediate access to the hybrid technology to study how the improvements had occurred. Others argued that the enhanced materials belonged to the Zephyrians by right of original ownership. Captain Zareth found himself facing a decision that would determine the fate of both civilizations. The humans had proven they were not the primitive thieves his people had assumed them to be. They were innovators and collaborators who had taken Zephyrian tools and made them into something greater than the sum of their parts. The question now was whether two proud species could find a way to share the future they had accidentally created together. War Commander Kextor had heard enough of what he called foolish talk about human improvements to alien technology. The idea that primitive creatures could enhance Zephyrian science was not just impossible, it was insulting to millions of years of his people's achievements. On the morning of the 6th day, he decided to end the debate with a demonstration of superior alien power. Without consulting Captain Zareth or the High Council, Kextor launched a limited strike against Earth's orbital defense platforms. His plan was simple: destroy a few human installations to prove their helplessness, then demand immediate surrender. The attack would show both species that Zephyrian military might was absolute and that further resistance was pointless. The first wave of alien fighters swept toward the orbital stations with weapons charged and shields at maximum power. Kextor expected the engagement to last mere minutes before the primitive human defenses collapsed. Instead, he witnessed something that shook his understanding of warfare itself. Lieutenant Commander Kate Wilson led the human fighter response from the cockpit of her modified interceptor. Her squadron of 24 pilots faced over 60 alien craft, each one superior in speed, firepower, and defensive capability. By every measure of military strategy, the humans should have been destroyed within moments of engagement. The battle that followed would be remembered by both species as the moment when human determination met alien superiority, and neither side emerged unchanged. Kate's pilots used tactics that the aliens had never encountered: unpredictable flight patterns, coordinated strikes from multiple angles, and a willingness to sacrifice individual craft to achieve tactical objectives. "All units, remember your training," Kate called out over the communication system as alien energy beams lit up the space around her fighter. "They have better ships, but we know these orbital platforms better than anyone. Use that knowledge." The human pilots flew their fighters through maintenance corridors and construction zones that were too narrow for the larger alien craft. They used the platform's own defensive systems as cover, drawing alien fire into areas where it would trigger automated countermeasures. Most importantly, they fought with a desperate creativity that came from knowing they were protecting their entire world. When the first alien fighter exploded under concentrated human fire, Kextor realized he had made a serious miscalculation. The human weapons should not have been able to penetrate Zephyrian shields, but somehow they were finding weak points and exploiting them with precision that suggested detailed knowledge of alien technology. On the surface of Earth, Major Sam Clark led ground forces in defending the quantum processing facilities that Kextor had targeted for capture. His soldiers had spent the past week studying alien technology and learning how to turn it against its creators. When Zephyrian landing craft descended toward the power plants, they found humans who were ready for them. The ground battle was brief but decisive. Human forces used modified industrial equipment to create electromagnetic pulses that disrupted alien communications and navigation systems. They turned mining lasers into anti-aircraft weapons and used construction robots as mobile defense platforms. Most shocking of all, they demonstrated an understanding of Zephyrian technology that allowed them to predict and counter alien tactical moves. Captain Zareth watched the battle reports with growing amazement and concern. His people were supposed to be technologically superior in every way, but the humans were fighting them to a standstill, using creativity and adaptation that Zephyrian military doctrine had never anticipated. More troubling was the realization that human understanding of alien technology was far deeper than anyone had suspected. After 6 hours of fighting, Kextor was forced to withdraw his forces. 3 alien fighters had been destroyed, 2 landing craft were disabled, and dozens of Zephyrian soldiers were wounded or captured. The humans had lost more ships and personnel, but they had proven something that changed the entire dynamic of the conflict. They could fight back effectively against superior alien technology. The battle's end brought an unexpected visitor to Captain Zareth's flagship. Dr. Martinez had requested permission to come aboard with a proposal that she claimed would save both civilizations. Against the advice of his security staff, Zareth agreed to the meeting. He was curious to learn what these remarkable humans might offer in place of continued warfare. Captain, today's battle proves that this conflict will cost both our peoples far more than either side can afford. Dr. Martinez began. Your forces are superior, but our determination is absolute. We will fight until every city burns and every human dies rather than surrender our world. The question is whether we are wise enough to find a better path. Zareth studied the human scientist with the respect one warrior gives to another after a hard-fought battle. What alternative do you propose, Dr. Martinez? My people still face extinction without the energy sources we came here to reclaim. Dr. Martinez activated a portable, holographic projector that displayed images of Earth's hybrid energy systems alongside technical specifications that made Zareth's eyes widen with surprise. We propose an alliance, Captain. Instead of taking our enhanced technology by force, work with us to understand how we can help solve your energy crisis. Our improvements to your original designs might be exactly what your people need. The proposal that followed was revolutionary in its scope and ambition. Humanity offered to share their enhanced quantum technology and help the Zephyrians establish new energy production facilities that used the hybrid designs. In exchange, the aliens would provide their advanced space travel capabilities and scientific knowledge to help humanity expand beyond Earth and establish colonies among the stars. Dr. Helen Brooks presented detailed plans for joint research facilities where human creativity could combine with Zephyrian science to develop technologies that neither species could achieve alone. Emma Rodriguez showed calculations proving that the hybrid energy systems could be scaled up to power entire star systems, providing enough energy to support both civilizations for millions of years. Most importantly, Dr. Walsh demonstrated communication technologies that would allow the two species to share knowledge and culture across interstellar distances. The alliance would not just solve the immediate energy crisis, it would create a partnership that could explore and settle the galaxy together. War Commander Kextor opposed the alliance with arguments about Zephyrian superiority and the dangers of contaminating pure alien technology with human modifications. His opposition led to a formal challenge for leadership of the expedition, with Captain Zareth facing his old rival in a contest that would determine the future of both species. The leadership duel was fought using traditional Zephyrian methods, but it was decided by modern understanding. Zareth argued that true strength came from adaptation and cooperation, while Kextor maintained that power alone determined survival. When the contest ended, Zareth had proven that wisdom and flexibility were more valuable than rigid adherence to old ways. 3 months later, President Collins and Captain Zareth signed the Sol Zephyr Accords in a ceremony that was broadcast to both worlds. The agreement established humanity's first interstellar alliance and created frameworks for shared exploration, joint scientific research, and mutual defense against common threats. Dr. Brooks led the first joint expedition to establish energy farms in the asteroid belt, where hybrid technology could be tested without affecting either homeworld. Commander Lucy Torres headed the new Combined Fleet Academy, where human and Zephyrian officers trained together for missions that would carry them to distant stars. The success of the alliance exceeded every expectation. Within 5 years, joint human-Zephyrian colonies were established in 3 star systems. The hybrid technologies developed through their cooperation made both species more prosperous and secure than either could have become alone. Most importantly, the partnership proved that the galaxy was large enough for multiple intelligent species to thrive. Together, Captain Zareth stood on the bridge of the first hybrid starship as it prepared to depart for the Andromeda Galaxy. The vessel combined human engineering with Zephyrian science to create something neither species could have built independently. Its crew included members of both civilizations working toward goals that would benefit all intelligent life. The final irony was not lost on anyone involved in the alliance. The Zephyrians had returned to Earth expecting to reclaim lost property from primitive thieves. Instead, they discovered partners who had taken their ancient tools and transformed them into keys that would unlock the entire universe. The supplies they had lost 20,000 years ago had become the foundation for a friendship that would endure for millions of years to come.